Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Rock Video Rental. We are continuing on with our Halloween horror movie marathon, and today we are talking about 1953's House of Wax. It is directed by Andre de Toth. The plot for this one is an associate burns down a wax museum with the owner inside, but he survives only to become vengeful and murderous. The cast. We've got Vincent Price as Professor Henry Jared, uh, Frank Lovejoy as Detective Tom Brennan, Phyllis Kirk as Sue Allen, Carolyn Jones as Kathy Gray, Paul Picerni as Scott Andrews, Roy Roberts as Matthew Burke, Angela Clark as Mrs. Andrews, Paul Kavanaugh as Sidney Wallace, and a very young Charles Bronson as Igor.
Dude, that still blows my mind. I never would have guessed that was him until I was looking at this list.
I recognized him, but I also saw that he was in this movie before he showed up in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of looking for him, and then as soon as I saw that guy, I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely Charles Bronson.
Man,
But
that's
yeah, the one that blew my mind is what you talked about before we started recording. Carolyn Jones,
mm-hmm.
who was Morticia in the old Addams Family TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that blew my mind.
And well, it's such a stark contrast considering that she's like a beach bleach blonde
Yeah,
in this, and then she
looks like a
goes
pinup girl in this.
right. Oh
But I
man.
mean, Morticia was kind of a pinup girl too. I mean, she was still very attractive, but definitely a different look.
Well, it's like the stark contrast of the what is it? The grease, what are they called? The greasers and the I don't know, the normal kids like Sandy and whatever her name. You have the blonde, cute, athletic, and then you have the dark black hair, dark clothing
Yeah.
contrast. So
You talking about Grease?
yeah.
I've actually never seen Grease.
Oh my gosh.
Not a musical fan though.
Yeah. Well, that was definitely some that was my parents had me watch when I was a kid. So
How dare you bring up Grease during horror week? Horror month, I should say.
ruined. Ruined.
No, I understood what you're saying though, so it was a good reference.
I guess we should probably get back on track before we
Yeah.
lose people.
So, was this a first time watch for you?
I don't know, man. Vincent Price, I love Vincent Price. Like he's man, I really should have looked it up since last time. I can't remember if it's the father, one of the fathers of the horror genre or grandfathers, whatever. There's a term for it. But he's just one of the classics and he does such a good job. So I can't remember if I'm confusing him in a different role, but I think I may have seen this one once a long time ago. So was this a first for you though?
This was a first for me. I've seen other Vincent Price stuff. I've saw the original The Fly, House on Haunted Hill, a couple things like that. I've seen bits and pieces of The Abominable Dr. Phibes,
Okay.
which is an interesting movie if you've never seen that. It kind of has a lot of Saw elements to it,
Hmm.
like these elaborate traps that he sets up. Um, yeah, I will say that like out of all the movies that we've watched so far in this marathon, this has been my favorite.
Rock.
Like the most entertaining, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best of the bunch. I still think probably Frankenstein's probably the best, but at least so far. Yeah, I knew a little bit about this just because it's a pretty famous movie. I've heard people talk about it. It was on Cinemassacre Monster Madness before, and he did like a deep dive into it.
Nice.
So I knew a lot about it. Knew what it was about. I knew that this is technically like a remake
Oh, okay.
because there's one I think from like the 1930s or something like that called Mystery at the Wax Museum or something like that.
Hmm.
and then they remade it again in 2005 with Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
And it was more of a straightforward slasher. But this does have a lot of slasher elements to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, Vincent Price is like this amazing wax sculptor, and his museum gets burnt down with him inside it. He ends up getting like horribly scarred, and then he wears a mask and he goes around killing people that were like
Well,
part of um basically who wronged him.
oh yeah. Well, yeah, actually that's kind of an interesting element because he killed the guy who burned down the place, and then he killed his girlfriend, fiance, something. Um, but she wasn't really a part of the burning down of the place, but maybe he killed her because she was with him. I guess I never really thought too deeply about that part.
Yeah, I just realized that he was basically taking revenge, which I mean is very similar to a lot of slasher movies
Hmm.
where like somebody gets disfigured and then they come back and seek vengeance.
Well, because there were other people who died, like a police commissioner or something like that.
Hmm.
And I didn't really catch how it happened and if it was like natural, because then it turns into essentially Vincent Price or Professor Henry Jared stealing dead bodies.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if he was killing them all. He obviously killed some of them, but I didn't know if he killed all of them or was just stealing some that were dying of natural causes.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mix of both, I believe. That's how I took it.
Hmm.
Um I don't know, some of the good stuff in this, like the whole story for it's great.
Hmm.
Um the acting is really solid. I mean, Vincent Price is pretty amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
Um and then Phyllis Kirk, who played Sue, she did a really good job as well. She's kind of like becomes like the main girl in it.
I feel like Vincent Price was like, you've got like three tiers. You've got top tier, middle tier, and then the bottom tier. And you got Vincent Price by himself on the top tier. And then
Hmm.
you've got a couple like Sue, the character Sue, and maybe the detective in the middle tier, and then everybody else was in the bottom tier. I mean, I wouldn't come out and say the acting was horrible, but I think there was a clear division or
Yeah,
separation from Vincent Price and everybody else.
yeah, that's pretty common in movies of this era, especially. Um, and I mean, like Charles Bronson's character is a deaf mute.
Yeah.
So basically, they just got Bronson because he is physically imposing
Hmm.
and kind of creepy looking.
Yeah.
He's got very like distinguished features,
It was
and
actually
like
pretty funny because my wife watched this one with me,
yeah,
ironically. She wasn't feeling good, so she went to bed when the kids went to bed, and then she woke up after a couple hours, and I was about to start the movie, so she watched it with me.
yeah.
And she's just like, why does the Igor character look more like a wax figure than all the other wax figures?
That was the other thing I was gonna say is the wax figures are amazing too.
Yeah.
Some of them, some of them. I'm pretty sure it was just real people standing still.
Hmm.
Either
Yeah.
that, or they were the most incredible wax figures you've ever seen.
I think I saw one or two moves, so I'm
I think
yeah.
so too. I'll say one of the creepiest parts is when the museum's burning down and like all the wax figures are melting.
Hmm.
That was really creepy looking. But when it's being lit on fire, I started laughing how awkward and goofy that guy was running around like lighting matches. And like
Yeah.
Vincent Price is kind of chasing him, like, no, no, stop. Like, dude, just knock him, like, punch him in the face, knock him over.
Dude, that escalated so quickly
Yeah,
because the
that
dude
really
was just
got out of hand. He
because
killed
the
a guy.
he did. The dude was his partner and he just wanted to get out of the business and he was talking about getting bought out, and then when he heard he had to wait 3 months, he was like, screw that, man, I'm gonna burn this thing down.
Wait, why am I gonna wait for 3 months and get money when I could just burn it down and get insurance money?
Yeah, and kill you. Like it's not
Yeah.
even like burn it down. By the way, I'm gonna have to kill you too. Like what the heck?
By the way, you have to die to make this plan work.
You will die.
There's another thing I realized watching this too. I mean, this movie is from 1953, but dude, how many sexist comments are in this movie?
Oh my gosh,
I
yeah.
laughed. I got to the point where I was laughing at it.
Well, there was also the point too where Sue was talking to the police, and Scott, who she already told the story to about some of the things going on, thinking about her friend being a wax figure in the museum. He was
Hmm.
just like, I can't remember if he said flat out came out and said you're crazy, but he's just like, oh, that's nonsense. You know, you need to stop thinking like that. And then they
Yeah.
go to the police station. She explains it to them, and they said they would look into it. And she's just like, man, I feel like you all are just looking at me like I'm going crazy. And Scott was just like, oh no, of course not. I'm just like, dude, the last scene, you basically came out and called her crazy.
Yep. And there's like a lot of remarks too. One of them that really like caught my attention and made me laugh is when they're in the morgue and like one of the bodies like pops up
Oh
and
yeah.
the one guy's like, "Oh, you get used to it. It's the embalming fluid that makes them do that. Just like a woman, they have to have the last word." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." But yeah, it's basically like one thing after another in this movie. And the whole scene with Carolyn Jones and Phyllis Kirk where she's helping her put on like a girdle
Oh yeah.
and she's like, "Well, you know what they say, if you don't watch your figure, the men will." And then like she's tightening her down and she's like, "I can barely breathe." And she's like, "Well, maybe I should loosen you up some." And she's like, "No, um, I want to have the waist of such and such." And like she's freaking tiny
Hmm.
even before she like cinches it down. It was just the way the world has changed. It kind of just cracked me up.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of crazy. There's a friend that I went to our college with, um, and she likes corsets, and
Yeah,
she would post pictures sometimes, and she had one and it looked exactly like that. Like it blows my mind that people can actually live and wear those
yeah,
because it's so insane. I mean, it's no surprising that they talked about how messed up people's organs got at that point, but geez, like
mm-hmm.
I saw it and I was just like, that's borderline creepy and kind of gross. But
Yeah, for sure. I thought the same thing too.
so,
There's another like funny quote where a man and a woman are sitting in a restaurant and it's obvious they're talking about like their relationship and he's
yeah.
just like, "What do you?" It's like something about where you want to go, and she's like, "No, I want to go to Niagara Falls. Like we can get a license in Buffalo, make it legitimate." And he looks at her, and then he's just like, why not? It might be fun." And then he's like, "Waiter,"
Yeah.
where it's like she wants to get married. And he's like, why not? It might be fun.
Oh man.
It was just so awkward. Yeah, Carolyn Jones's character. We talked about it before we started recording,
Hmm.
but like her laugh is one of the most annoying things ever.
Oh man, yeah.
She sounds like freaking Betty Boop.
I know. I kind of wish I mean, I don't want to really spend a lot of time on it, but I'd like to see some of her other roles that she does. I'm really hoping that that's not like natural.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that was like a character she played.
Yeah,
That was
because if
just
it
part
was,
of the character.
yeah, if it was, great job on her because I think that's what they were going for. Kind of that like over the top, almost kind of like a ditzy girl wants to be popular with all the guys kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
I would say that another positive with this movie is the pacing of it. It's a pretty short movie. It's
mhm,
under an hour and a half, and like no time's really wasted. Uh there are some slower parts, but I mean it's a 1950s movie and it took time to like build atmosphere and build the characters.
yeah.
It's a huge like stark difference between this and like the slasher movies that I watched from the 80s,
Hmm.
because especially the ones like to the mid to late 80s, like they all they did was just have tons of characters that can be thrown in there and like add to the body count. Where the ones from the early 80s and older movies took time to like establish characters and make you care about them
Hmm.
like before they died and give a little backstory. And this movie does the same thing. Like it builds up, Vincent Price's character. It builds up Sue Allen and both of the Andrews.
Yeah. Even
Yeah,
Carolyn Jones's character had some build up.
yeah, yeah. It was nice to see a movie that took its time to give the character some depth before it killed him off.
Right.
But yeah, really, anything else to add to this? Or you want me to get into trivia? Get any
Um,
final statements before we get to that?
well, there was one funny comment while we were watching this. It was actually towards the end when the character Sue was in the wax museum by herself and she was about to be like abducted or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the Igor character was following her around,
Yeah.
and he's supposed to be a deaf mute. And then I turned to my wife and I was just like, because he's like creeping around, he's hiding behind things, and she doesn't know he's there. And so I just turned to my wife and I was just like, how does a deaf mute know that they're being quiet?
You could have like the world's loudest shoes on.
Yeah, like he has no idea if he makes, I mean, I'm sure like they have like their senses, I mean, not that they would think this detailed with it, but it was just kind of one of those dumb ironic things where it's just like, yeah, they have other senses that they can tell some certain things, but it's just like honestly, like his pants could be like making a bunch of noise.
I was gonna say he could almost be like dressed like Sinbad in the 90s trying to sneak up
Right.
on someone like wearing a complete windbreaker suit and sneakers.
Exactly. Like and he would have no idea.
Yeah.
I thought that was a funny comment.
Yeah, it's one of those things you never really think about.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure how early this was in Bronson's career. I mean, it's got to be one of his first. I mentioned before we started recording that he was in Magnificent Seven, which was a earlier role for him.
Hmm.
But this one predates that for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's probably a lot of the reason why he didn't have any lines. So it was 1953. He had a few movies and stuff before that, but his first thing was a TV show called Fireside Theater, and it was in 1949.
Mm. Yeah, and he's got quite a bit leading up to that, but I'm sure like the significance of his role was not that much.
Yeah, The Magnificent Seven was 1960. So, I mean, he had a big career like from the 60s on, and then like especially once he hit um the 70s and 80s, like when he had all the Death Wish movies and he was in like every canon movie.
Yeah. Oh, I see he changed his name
Yeah.
in the mid 50s. So,
Yeah, because I think he was like Romanian or something like that.
yeah, it says that he was listed even in this movie as Charles Buczynski.
Yeah. Oh, so you want me to get into trivia?
Yeah, let's go for
Got
it.
a decent amount here. So this is Warner Brothers' first 3D movie. It was directed by Andrew Datoth, who was actually blind in one eye and couldn't even see the effect.
No.
Yeah, that makes me think of the classic story, like, um, the man sells his watch to buy his wife a comb for her
Mhm.
hair. She sells her hair to get him a chain for his watch, kind of thing.
Yep.
This guy shot a 3D movie and he's blind in one eye, he can't even see it. Um, so the scene where the fire happens, uh, the cameras were like started rolling, and they were starting to set 3 spot fires in strategic locations. Well, the fires like quickly got out of control and emerged into one massive inferno
Oh my
that
gosh.
actually put a hole in the soundstage roof and singed Vincent Price's eyebrows.
Oh gosh.
But because the rapidly melting wax mannequins would have been very difficult to replace, he just kept filming, and even the firemen arrived to help like extinguish the flames.
Yeah, dude, there were a couple times that I was looking at it and I made a comment during that scene where I was just like, are all those fires real? Because I was just like, that would be so hot in there.
Yeah, well, and like there were so many stunts and stuff too. Like, Vincent Price like fell off that stairway,
Hmm.
like over that railing, and I'm like, that looked like it was actually Vincent Price doing that.
Yeah, and actually, during that too, it looked like maybe they had a failed attempt at first
Yeah,
because he hit the railing and it looked like he was getting ready to fall, but it didn't give all the way.
and then he like bounced back, and it was like Three Stooges style, where he just hit him again, and then he fell over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it was just kind of like professional wrestling where they just kind of rolled with it and tried to make it look seamless. I noticed that too. So Vincent Price actually liked to attend screenings of this movie in disguise. Um, he told biographer Joel Eisner that he would regularly go out to House of Wax during its run. Happily for Price, the 3D glasses would actually like conceal his identity in the back of a dimly lit theater. One night, he decided to make his presence known at a showing in New York City. He sat between 2 teenagers. Right after like one of the scenes, he leaned forward and asked, "Did you like it?" And like in Vincent Price's words, he said they went right into orbit. Could you imagine that though, watching a movie and like there's like a crazy scene that happens, and then the actor who's in the movie leans forward and asks if you like it?
Dude, I couldn't imagine. And also like Vincent Price, like it it would be so easy to recognize him because of his voice.
Oh yeah, and
And
his mustache.
yeah, that would be pretty crazy. I was trying to think of somebody that you could compare it to now in the kind of horror genre maybe or something like that, but
Yeah, I don't know. He was such an original. I was trying to think of someone with a really recognizable voice. Like, I guess if you were in a action movie and Arnold asked you if you like something,
right.
did you like it?
What color is your hair?
Do you want some berries? Oh man. So next one I got is Phyllis Kirk. Like she tried to turn the movie down, but she was under contract with Warner Brothers, so she had no choice but to appear in a movie.
Hmm.
And it didn't stop her from complaining about the whole thing. She said, "I bitched and moaned and said that I wasn't interested in becoming the Fay Ray of my time." Uh, and then another bone of contention was the 3D format, which she regarded as a gimmick. However, despite the reservations, she decided that playing ball would be preferable to them like being suspended. And
Mhm.
incidentally, she went on to have a lot of fun making the movie. She admitted,
Oh, good.
yeah. So Warner Brothers' restoration of this movie for the 3D Blu-ray release cost $300,000.
Dang.
The original negatives were unusable because of water damage, and the Warner Phonic stereo soundtrack no longer exists.
Hmm.
Yeah. The film came in substantially under budget. One way that they saved money was were reusing some of the same wax figures as seen in the museum before the fire. The original museum footage was taken after House of Wax scenes when the figures could be destroyed on camera without any replacements.
Rock.
And the last thing I got is this movie had a $1 million budget and it made 23.7 million
Nice.
in 1953.
Yeah.
So now let's jump right into grades. I pulled from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think those are?
7.7.
It is a 7.0.
Ooh, wow. Interesting. That's our lowest one yet for this month. Rotten Tomato critic 92%.
93, you were close.
Rotten Tomato audience 85.
72.
Ooh.
I don't know why.
Interesting.
So I'll let you go first this time. I feel like I went first last time.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely entertaining film. As you said, just old movies did it right. Like, I mean, I do enjoy some 2 hour, 2.5 hour long movies when they're done right, but so many of them are too much now. And
Hmm.
so to be going through these older movies that are usually around an hour and a half is just honestly refreshing. And uh it makes this experience of watching older films that much better because most of the time they don't waste time. And it was well done. The acting, like I said, Vincent Price, awesome. A couple other supporting actors and actresses did well, but kind of for the most part, like if you had to put it on a balancing scale on like, okay, was the acting overall in this movie good or bad? I I kind of put it leaning to maybe just a little bit on the bad. Like the supporting people were, and of course, I think it's kind of more of the style back then too, of how people just overall were acting in a majority of the movies. Um, but just some of it was, man, I don't know if I would say not very believable would be the best way to describe it, but felt like it could have been improved. So but the story was great, the special effects were really good, um, and the music fit well. Just really had a good time enjoying it. So I'm torn between two grades. I think hmm I think I am gonna give it a 5 out of 5.
Rock?
I was thinking about 4.5 originally, but it's just like it's mostly nitpicky stuff, and the acting wasn't really quote unquote bad. Like it just
Yeah.
I think really honestly Vincent Price just set the bar really high and everybody else was kind of, you know, did an all right job. So yeah, I think I'll settle on still 5 out of 5. A bit I I just gave Frankenstein a 5 as well. As far as which one, and I think we might review or kind of talk about everything at the end again, but I liked Frankenstein more, but this one was a thoroughly enjoyable experience too, so it's hard not to give it 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also gave it a 5 out of 5. Um, and like to compare with Frankenstein, which I also gave a 5. I think Frankenstein is the better movie,
Mhm.
but I was more entertained by House of Wax. And
Yeah,
like you
I
said,
think
like Vincent Price was so good in this movie.
yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think that's a great way to say that.
Yeah, that's how kind of how I feel about like with Halloween and even like the Halloween series and Friday the 13th, where I think the Friday the 13th series is more entertaining, but the Halloween, like the original Halloween, is better than any movie, like in the Friday the 13th series, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how I feel with House of Wax and Frankenstein. Um, yeah, this one I was actually kind of surprised at how much I liked it because some of these older movies sometimes can be kind of a chore for me. Um, But I mean, this one had a nice brisk pace to it. There was a lot going on. The story was good, and you know, it's a 3D movie. Those always crack me up because they always do the hammy. Whoa! Look at this! Throw it into the screen, and we get that quote unquote intermission where there's a guy with the paddle balls.
Yeah.
Like that was just so dumb, but it's just funny that they just threw that in there so they can be like, see, this is in 3D. Whoa.
Oh man, actually I didn't even think about that because there was that one specific scene where somebody threw something and I was just like, "Whoa, dude, watch out. You almost hit the camera." But obviously that was deliberate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
It reminds me of in the 90s when TGIF did like every episode was in 3D. Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, like I think it was like it was on ABC. Like there was a 1 week. It might not have just been TGIF, but because I remember there was like a Home Improvement episode that was in 3D where like Tim's got like a rake in front of the camera and everything. It was so dumb, but it was hilarious. But I think I still have some of those 3D glasses somewhere that they like sent in the newspaper
Nice.
so you could watch it. It was the old red and blue.
Mm-hmm. Old school.
Yeah, the ones that didn't work as well. But yeah, this is it. It's an easy 5 out of 5 for me because I really enjoyed it, and I'll probably watch it again and recommend it to people.
Rock.
But next one we're gonna be doing is another classic, one I've watched not too long ago, and one I think only watched this one other time, because we're watching the Japanese original version of Godzilla, from 1954, aka Gojira. Because I've seen quote unquote Godzilla King of the Monsters, which is the Americanized version that they added Raymond Burr into.
Mm,
I've seen that one plenty of times, but the original uncut Japanese one with subtitles is what we're going to be watching,
rock.
which is a fair amount different. And there's some things that were cut out of it for the Americanized version, and yeah, this one has a different tone to it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Exactly. So, yeah, if you guys can get your hands on that, check it out. I know they did like a DVD release of it, back when they released like all the Japanese versions of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get your hands on that, check it out. But until then, as always, be kind and rewind.